All right, well, I'm going to just jump in because I know I had said earlier 2:30, but then something came up and I wasn't able to meet that time frame. And they'll post and people can look at it later. So, but anyway, I just wanted to go live because I wanted to engage people. I don't mind putting together videos and putting them out there for people to look at later. But you know, I really do want to make this a week conversation. Hi, Carrie. A we conversation and not a me conversation, because that's not what this is about. But my name is Katrina, and I had founded An Addict Speaks. And our family, for those who don't know, our family was profiled in the FBI's Chasing the Dragon documentary as one of the subjects. And I am basically, what my goal is now is I'm looking for addiction solutions. I know we've had the awareness conversation, a lot of that's going on, and I think that should continue. But they say the first step towards change is awareness, right? And then the second is acceptance, and then so forth. So I continue to tell the stories or whatever, but I do think we're at the point now where we want to just, you know, move into the next phase of things. At least that's where my head is, right? Hi, Lauren. So that said, I just want to give everybody a little heads up on where, you know, my head is with that. So I've been trying to work with various groups, and that might not happen, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be distracted or deterred. I'm moving forward. I have confidence in my ability to do whatever I need to do, and I would like to engage more women on this, and you know, I'd like to hear from them and you know, see what we can do maybe together to propel that forward. So I had mentioned a couple things that I normally would do a video on, and I'm going to go ahead and just dive right in. So when it comes to telling my story, there is no way in the world that I could sit here and tell you my story in a few minutes or even an hour or longer, because it's been going on for a very long time. This is something I've struggled with off and on all my life. But at age 17, that was probably when things were the worst, because you know, our parents passed away in a drowning accident, and I basically, between abuse and living here, there, whatever, I went through a lot, and I put myself through a lot. But at age 17, I ended up finding myself one time living in one of my runaway instances, living in, I guess what you call a crack house, with a couple of people who protected me. They were, you know, they knew I was a minor, and they were trying to look out for me. And they were actually heroin addicts. And I remember the first time, I didn't even realize what was going on. I just knew, you know, I was a cocaine girl. That was back when it was a big deal. And so I knew something was going on with them, because they weren't like everybody else. They would always be sleeping or passed out or whatever. And a couple of times the female, she would, you know, she passed out and she'd end up in the tub, and they're, you know, trying to revive her with cold showers, whatnot. And I remember thinking then and saying then, I will never touch that stuff. I don't know what it is about it that makes them, you know, driving into DC with them, sitting in, you know, sitting outside or wherever in a really bad neighborhood waiting for them to do whatever they did and come out. I never understood what was going on. I didn't understand the feeling of it. I didn't understand the drive. I didn't understand why anybody would want to take something that's killing them, making them throw up and end up in a, you know, a bathtub dead, essentially. And their arms just completely destroyed. I never understood that. So it was really rough. And what got me out of that situation, because I was going to stay, there was no way in the world. I remember one time I made a call to some family and friends, and they actually came up and got me, because I was at a point where I'm like, this isn't for me, what am I doing? And they came and got me. But then I turned around the first chance I got and went right back to it. So that said, there was an incident where one of the guys we knew, who was a dealer, he used to deal for his dad, and this was in Arlington, Virginia. He used to deal for his stepdad, actually, and they got into some sort of altercation, and his stepfather ended up shooting him in the head. And this was a kid that I actually liked quite a bit. He was a good guy, just, you know, young guy caught up in the wrong thing. Stepfather shot him in the head, and the police were called, and as a result, you know, there's police all over the place, and this parking lot of a apartment complex in Arlington, Alexandria area. And we're all outside because of the hoopla. Police are all around, and they are questioning people. And I could see them, one of them looking at me, eyeing me. And I try to scurry out of there because, you know, I'm underage, of course, and I'm a runaway, reported runaway. And as I'm trying to leave, I hear him yelling, hey, you better come back here. Anyway, I ended up going back and answering his questions. And when I did that, I gave him my fake Social Security number and information. And, of course, it didn't take them long to realize that that wasn't it. And then they confronted me about it and ended up taking me into custody. And then when we got to the police station, the officer was awesome. He actually put me on the phone with his girlfriend, ordered pizza. He was super kind to me. And he told me then, he said, what were you doing there? You know, you didn't belong there. What kind of, I knew you were young, and I knew, you know, you just didn't belong there. And I remember thinking then, what exactly that meant. Was it the youth, or what was it? Because I was a girl, I couldn't understand exactly what he meant by that. But I appreciated the gesture because it saved my life. I have no doubt in my mind, because I was getting to that point where every addict does eventually, or a homeless addict does eventually, where you'll do anything to survive. You'll do anything to get your drugs, right? And so I was at that point. So when they got me out of that situation, you know, I ended up once I was freed, which was shortly after, going down to Tidewater area, running around, doing this, that, and then determine, as hard as this is to admit, but I'm going to admit it because you got to be truthful, right? As a young girl who was very lost and felt like my only value at that point, based on what people had said to me or exploited or whatever, you know, I was like, well, I'm going to go to California, I'm going back home, and I'm going to go into the porn industry. Stupid stuff. I know it's retarded, that you're, I shouldn't use retarded, that's not what I meant, sorry, forgive me. It's sad that your mindset is that that's what your goals would be, but that's how bad it was for me, and it is for a lot of people, young ladies and young men, both, you know. But then I ended up pregnant with my daughter. And when the shock wore off, I ended up, she saved my life. She really saved my life, because after that, I changed completely. I got clean, and I never again, other than drinks or whatever, never again used drugs again. Not weed, not nothing. I mean, I tell you nothing, I mean nothing. Barely even Tylenol. Until the age of about 35, when I was prescribed them. And when I was prescribed them, I didn't realize then what they were. They didn't explain, you know, the side effects, this, that, and the other. And it was at a time after my daughter had been abused, and financially I was spiraling. I'd been laid off, and I was just not in a good place. I kept ending up in relationships I didn't want to be in because I felt guilty, felt like I owed people things. If they were nice to me, I felt like I owed them. I know it doesn't make sense, but that was the mindset, you know, that's what happens. So at that point, I injured my back falling down the stairs, and I dealt with the pain for like 3 weeks before taking anything. And then when someone gave me something and it helped, I actually went to the doctor and they gave me more, and that's pretty much the end of that. It took the pain away physically, and it took the emotional pain away. It made me feel stronger, made me feel more capable of handling my issues, right? A few months later, when I started to realize that I couldn't go without a pill without feeling ill, I tested myself, because I thought, well, if I just don't take this, see what happens. And when I got deathly ill and couldn't function, was having problems sleeping, problems with emotional stability or whatever, that's when it hit me that I was addicted. But at that point, I didn't know what to do, so I was trying to come off, and when I wasn't able to because it was just too painful or my emotional state wasn't good, you know, it went from that to that to that to the next thing you know, from doctor shopping, God knows what, to writing prescriptions, which is another story in and of itself. And from, you know, writing prescriptions to selling them, from selling them to, 40 pills a day or whatever. So, so I say all that to say that I know that a lot of people are sharing their stories, and they're talking about this a lot because they're talking about the suburban, it's happening to the kids, it's happening to the soccer moms and this and that. And I guess, I would have to take exception, and because I noticed yesterday something that really touched me. I was interacting with someone who I don't think she's in the industry anymore, but she used to be in the industry. An adult, former adult entertainer, and I remember thinking, what a kind person. I always thought she was, a good person and a beautiful person, right? And I found it interesting because then I was watching a documentary on addiction, and they were talking about, the tendency of, well, that's what you would see, or you would think of prostitutes doing, or this one doing, or that one, or bad people doing, right? And I thought, wow, we really haven't come that far yet, that we're still calling these things, moral failings, or what we assume. And even when we're sharing our stories, we're like, well, I came from a good family. Or when you're talking about your children, well, they were raised in a good home, right? And you think about it and you go, what is the definition of a good home versus a not good home? I mean, you mean a home in which there was no abuse? Because there was no abuse in my home, with my children. I didn't abuse my children. If anything, I probably didn't say no to them. So what does that mean exactly? Good home? You mean financially a good home? Those things are the things that we need to think about when we're talking about this, at least in my mind. And I'm not an expert, but I'm thinking as a person that's been on every side of the fence all my life, lived and put on different shoes, I could see where that would, be hard. And as such, I feel like that's part of the problem with unifying our message, with recovery group or just in general, is because everyone is coming at it from a different segment. You have parents who aren't, addicted, who have children that are addicted, no matter how old those children are, and we frame it as youth. You have adults that are addicted but come from maybe blue collar versus white. There are all of those different things, right? Instead of unifying the message and unifying the idea behind it, that bottom line is addiction comes from a place in my mind, and this is just my opinion, of a lack of connection and a lack of, just feeling isolated and not feeling like you matter, but not getting necessarily to the point where you're willing to shoot yourself. You just want the pain to go away. You're running from that state of pain. So that's exactly, yeah. And so that's where I stand on that. And even with our recovery movements, I still find that women, even men, judge women. It's a situation that is not quite, I don't understand it entirely, really, why this happens, if it's, if it's a mom of a child that's lost, we want to use them to talk about this, because then it will, some sort of, you get more sympathy out of it, or more action on it, versus if you use someone else who's, maybe used drugs for all of their lives, but when you take into consideration the fact that all souls are born good, and at some point, not everyone who experiences the trauma goes on and uses drugs, right? But they have found that most people who do drugs have experienced a trauma. So why would we then turn around and, discourage once again? So I guess what I'm saying is, as far as the recovery group or recovery movement is concerned, it would be nice to see maybe some change in how we talk about it, and that's myself included. I'm going to stop talking about the money I used to make. I'm going to stop talking about the good home, or I really want to get away from that, because I think at the end of the day that it's still sending the double message. If I'm wrong, you guys please let me know. And there's not a whole lot of you in here. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Jonathan. Not a lot of you in here, but that's just where I'm, stand. And I do think more women need to come forward, and more women from different segments and different age groups, different socioeconomic backgrounds, more, faith, whatever, come together under the same, in a same group to represent the fact that it has nothing to do with the whole idea of, good home, bad home, prostitute, not prostitute, mother of 10 versus, you know what I'm saying. I hope everybody gets what I'm trying to say. Hi, Melissa. So, that was the first one, the one thing I wanted to address. And then the other thing was on the pitfalls, I think, of the addicted when they're going into a life of recovery, is a lot of it, we don't have things in place. And I'm talking about these things because I'm trying to somehow suggest, but I'm not going to come out and say it, where my head is in terms of what I want to do. As I said, awareness, we're at the awareness part. We've got beyond that. We still need to keep talking, but I think we need to talk about solutions at this point as well. And these two things that the one I just mentioned and what I'm about to say, segue into that, right? So when you come out of the addiction part of it, right, and you've been in jail and then you get out, there are not enough things in place. We all know that. Exactly. Thank you, Diane. I don't think that we all know that there's not enough in place, right, to empower any kind of success for most people. There are a lot of pitfalls along the way, no matter how excited, and this is the reason I call it broken magic, because no matter how excited you are about your sobriety or about your new life, real life, people threaten it easily with just everything, coming off of all that addiction, being released into the wild, not having the coping skills. On top of that, you usually have to deal with some sort of financial repercussions from that, especially if you're an adult. IRS stuff, getting back into the workforce, jobs that you no longer are qualified for. But more than that, a couple of months, right? And then coming back into that, you're not ready. There has to be a long-term process where almost like, it's like a school of life where you're coming from that incarceration or even rehab, which I think should be locked, and then introduced slowly to life skills, whether it be not just the cooking and all that, but I'm talking about assistance with, driver's license, all of those different things that come up, and it takes a long time to get through that. And then you need to get back into the workforce. But the workforce, that's a loose term, because we talk about, well, what would we be qualified for, and that comes into what I'm thinking about on a much broader scale. So, and I don't really want to get into much of that because it's still in development. You know what I mean? And basically, that's pretty much all I had to say. I think that at this point right now, I'm really just looking to work with other groups, and if I have to put my own thing in place, I'll do it. And if it never goes anywhere, it doesn't. But I have a feeling it will. If we can get beyond the egos, because none of us can mind read. None of us know, unless some evidence comes up that somebody's embezzled, and I wouldn't have anything to embezzle because I don't have any money. But unless evidence comes out that you have another motive, I would never question motives, especially if women and fathers who have lost children. I would never think twice about, but any person in recovery doing something good, or trying to do something good, I would never question their motives at all. I can't even imagine, because, like I said, none of us knows what's going on in someone else's head. So then you're just trying to guess it based on what. I would look at what is actually being accomplished, and I really do want to work with other groups. But if I end up never getting anywhere for whatever reason, I'm going to continue to do this on my own, no matter how, when, what. I start by going to the schools, rehabs. I like working with the youth. They're my first, choice. But women's groups, males, it doesn't matter, jails, whatever. I don't mind anything, because I do want to send the message of not necessarily recovery and how you get to that, right? Because AA, NA, all of those, I've been in all of those, and there are judgmental groups, and for those parents who have not attended meetings with their family members before, I'll tell you, recovery community is probably the hardest on each other of anybody I've ever seen in my life. There's a lot of and all of it comes from not having a strong self-esteem of our own. And I used to be like that. I used to be like, mind reader, trying to figure out what people, all that stuff. And then it really just got to the point where I was wrong about the people that I had judged, and I was wrong about the people that I had accepted into my life. So since I couldn't figure out which until I had evidence to prove the, contrary, I just decided to stop doing that. And so as such, I'm really hoping that we can get to a place where we can maybe set aside the egos or the different agendas, and maybe work together to try to more rehabs, more $25,000 a year, all of that, or a month or whatever. I don't see that being the solution, and that's just from my point of view, because I've seen too many people walk out of those places. I've seen too many families go broke. All right, that's not the solution. And I know everybody wants to talk about rehabs, and divert away from jail, and that I agree with you 100%. But where do you get the money to do it, you know? So we have to talk through all of those things. To me, that's the hard work of actually coming up with the plan to find the money to put the ideas together that would actually work. And you get those ideas from people who have walked the walk. Formerly addicted that are serious about giving back. Families of addicted who saw success and progress in their own loved one based on these, you know, whatever. And it's not hardcore science, you know, in terms of what will work for one versus the other. But at the end of the day, there's two things that have been proven to work for everyone, and that is connection and a sense of self-esteem and accountability. By giving someone something to do, if they're good at it, then, you know, they grow from that point. So it's really all I have. And I really wish there was more people on here giving me some questions or doing something. I'm just waiting for some kind of feedback. Does anybody have any ideas on that? I have to have my Red Bull. It's the afternoon. Yes, that's right. That's right. And I believe in, you know, I heard, what is it? I heard one time or read one time, and I thought it was a joke at first because I'm like, that's just way too simple to be true. It said, from wherever you are, that's where you are, right? From wherever you are, that's where you are. And I was like, I thought it was a joke, but it was real. But it's true. You jump in from wherever you are. You don't wait till you're there. You don't wait till you're this. You wait, you do it now. And I jumped in from wherever I am. And wherever I am is not ideal, perfect, and it's not where I hope to be for the rest of my life, but it is a start, and that's where everybody needs to, you know, to be, as long as their intentions are good. I am talking. Yes. So, I just don't want this to go on and on and on, because then it's probably longer than a typical video anyway, but everybody that wanted me to go live, I don't see them on here. Where's my live? Maybe I just can't see who it is that is live, because I mean, it might not have spoken or whatever. Well, if nobody has anything to say, this was a nice trial. Finally got it to work. The Wi-Fi wasn't strong enough before. I had a lot of interference or whatever, and it would tell me that I had a weak signal strength, so it wouldn't let me go live. Alrighty. Well, I hope to have some announcements here in the next couple days. Once I decide for sure what it is, to what direction I'm going to go. But, you know, I really hope that, you know, we can get some work done, and hopefully together. That's my goal. So, alrighty, well, I'm going to let everybody go. Thank you very much for joining, those who were able, and hopefully next time, you know, maybe I'll need to move these a little later in the day or something. But, you know, I'm surprised we got that many, but we'll get there. Thank you, Melissa. Yes, and you're the kind of woman I'm talking about, you know, like everybody from different walks of life. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to say it out loud, but it's hard. It's hard. And I find, and sometimes I tell Diane all the time, I would find myself like wanting to give up. Because I don't understand it. But I guess until you've lost a child, until you've had the world, and I'm not saying that other people haven't reached their rock bottom, but I guess I'm saying, until you've had everything stripped from you, or you've had your world cave from under you because of the loss of a child or whatever, you know? I don't know, you know, if people fully get it. This whole self-centered thing about why, if, you know, if people post about, live video about donuts or the dinner or whatever, or concerts, you know, there shouldn't be anything wrong with posting live video and wanting to change, you know, hearts or whatever. And you don't have to be perfect, because there is no perfect human in order to do that. And, you know, the hard work of doing these things, it doesn't have to have one person's name over it. You know, it's supposed to be an effort. And that's why I think things aren't getting done. I know, I like the kids best, but gotta get to that point. I mean, you know, a few things here and there are fine, but I really wanted to get out there and just be with them more often, you know? Oh, I know, absolutely. But you know what? I do think there's power in numbers, and that's why I invite other groups. Yep. And you do for me too. I get to the point where I'm just like, I see so much hate and negativity, and I'm like, how in the world are you supposed to get the collective message that we all care, or that we're competent enough to even be able to do anything, if we can't even seem to agree on anything, if we're all working against each other? And nobody wants to hear it because nobody wants to talk about it because they're tired of hearing about addiction. I understand that. But you know what? I'm tired of the stuff coming in from Mexico, and I'm tired of it coming in from China and nobody doing anything about it either, because we don't want to have that conversation. I mean, you know, we can go get a kid down the street that's peddling to somebody else, but I don't see how that's going to solve the problem. And you only get change when you push it, and you push it through unity, and, you know, applying pressure to your lawmakers, unfortunately. So, hope I didn't ramble too much. I really wish I had a lot more women. I don't have any judgment against the guys, don't get me wrong, gosh forbid, no. But there are a lot of men out there doing this, and, you know, yet it affects women so much, you know. It affects women as mothers, it affects women as in their own addiction, with their children, you know. I know. Exactly. Exactly. Your life centers around your loss. Diane knows her, you know, her loss, even of my daughter, even though it wasn't her biological daughter, she still loved her. These are people you loved and you lost, and it's almost as if until you can go through that experience yourself, there's exceptions out there, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying a lot of it just seems so self-centered. Why? You know, why? Why can't we get on the same page? Why can't we make something happen? Somebody wanted to call it rhinoceros whatever, you know, and I'm just one of the foot soldiers. I'd take it in a minute. I don't care about all that. I just care about getting something done. Yep. Yeah, Melissa's, oh, you know what? I should have done that. Yep. You know, I was going to grab Kirsten's picture and show it, but I'll do it on another live feed. I don't think I have a lot of people that get on, have wanted to join on or be friends or whatever, and they didn't even know what I'm doing. I guess they just followed somebody else. So I was thinking they were seeking me out for the benefit of the addiction stuff, and there was some of that, but then some of it's just whatever. And I'm like, you don't even, you didn't even know I had a daughter? Oh, you don't, oh, wow. So, you know, maybe we need to drive people crazy with that. And if they don't like it, they can just exit your page and go somewhere else, right? Mm-hmm. Because I read articles, and they always, when they're talking about the Chasing the documentary, they always want to reference how much money I made. And I'm like, I was hoping that wasn't the takeaway when I did that thing. I was hoping that it was, you know, okay, I had that life, but the takeaway was that I lost a daughter while I was in jail, you know, from this. And it doesn't seem to really be, I don't know, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to be the message that people get. And that kind of bugs me a little bit. Yeah, I know. I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. So, no effort is perfect, you know, as long as we can just get our stuff in place. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say in summary, is that I want more action. Stories are always going to be there. We're going to talk our stories forever. And we should. We need to keep our kids' memories alive, because they were human beings and they were life forces. And what is everybody's purpose on this earth if you're not doing anything except living for yourself? Maybe you don't care. Maybe you want to pass on. But I understand that life is short from my experiences. I understand the gravity of that loss and how it changed my life forever. And then I'll never be the same person for the rest of my life. Melissa understands that. Diane understands that. Mothers who have lost. Fathers who have lost. Well, I was jailed because I was writing my own prescription fraud. I'd lost insurance, and I had scammed, conned. Some of the doctors just didn't care, and not doctors, but whatever they were writing them for me anyway because of paying them big money. But lost insurance, so I was having to self-pay. So what I would actually do is write my own prescriptions, so I wouldn't have to pay the doctor or be on that prescription monitoring program. So I wrote my own prescriptions, and would either go in and pick them up or get someone else to do it and pay for them at cost, generic, whatever, with like a discount card or something. And I got caught up with that. Cold, if that answers your question. And I guess that's why I was involved with law enforcement, which in turn is how they connected with me, which evolved into the documentary. Not my personal experience, but evolved into them asking us to participate with the documentary. That plus my daughter dying while I was in jail. Yes, yeah, that's a good idea. Yes. Yeah, I'm new to this. You guys are going to have to give me a little. I just decided to jump in. As Diane knows, because Diane is the fiance of my daughter's. Back up. Diane is the mother of my daughter's fiance. And she ended up taking on the role. I actually wrote her from jail. And her and I had not been friends before. I wrote her from jail. Right. I wrote her from jail and I thanked her even though we had no relationship and I knew she didn't like me and I didn't really like her because she didn't seem like my type of woman. You know, they had security clearance and she's very perfect and very, you know. And I wrote her and thanked her because that's how humbled I was in jail and I was thankful that someone was watching out for my daughter. But despite Diane's best efforts, she did not understand, which is why we tell our stories. She did not know what was going on with Kirsten. She did not know that the reason Kirsten was acting erratically and not herself and deteriorating was because of the drug stuff. And by the time she did realize that she wasn't emotionally, you know, just didn't have the knowledge to be able to do as much as she wanted to do to help her. And by the time she did realize it, well, by the time I realized it, because I was advised on that Thursday. She passed away on Sunday morning. Sorry, I had that. I thought I had them blocked. She passed away on that Sunday morning, but she started to deteriorate on that Saturday is when her organs started failing. And that's when they found her dead and they resuscitated her at the home. But on that Thursday before is when I was told on the phone that my daughter was starting to use drugs and that she was doing it intravenously. Yeah. Oh, that's very nice of you, but that's not really what I'm looking for. I have spent a lifetime making bad choices, choosing wrong men, not relying on myself, not relying on God, and I have a son, and I love him. He has a beautiful daughter, and that makes me a grandmother, and I just said it out loud so everybody can shove it who has problems with me. I said it, and she's gorgeous, and that's where my focus is on that stuff, which is all that matters. I learned after losing my daughter, and the addiction awareness and solutions. So now, yes, exactly. Diane's right. $22,000 is what they told Diane. They could help Diane. She made calls around, and they told her for $22,000 that they could get my daughter treatment. I didn't have experience with rehab stuff, and because I didn't think Kirsten would do that. Kirsten used to hate the pills. She used to just hate it. I think it was a real rift between us because she hated the pills. She hated her friends that did the pills. She said they all fall asleep and throw up, and she didn't understand. She was a weed fan. And so when Kirsten started using pills, it was such a shock to all of us, but especially when she started using them. The light is bad in here. Hold on, I'm going to try to see if I can adjust it and get some more light in here. If not, I will. When she started using the intravenously is when it got really bad. And that Thursday before she died, I ended up tracking her down from the jail and talking to her on the phone, and she was really out of it. And a couple of her friends got on the phone and explained what was going on, and of course I panicked because Kirsten passed out on the phone, essentially. And I was like, this isn't good, and they're explaining the condition she was in. And at that point, because it was evening, so I couldn't do anything, but the next morning when I got out of the cell, I called my lawyer, I called her lawyer, and because she had a lawyer for DUI, and I said, please, please, please get her locked up on the DUI. And my attorney says, I'll do the best I can because I can't make any promises. He'd have to call the Commonwealth attorney. I had a bad feeling she was gonna die. So Saturday afternoon when they came and gave me, the information or tried to take me to give me the information, I already knew when they came and got me. Exactly right. Exactly right. Exactly right. Melissa's right. It's wrong. And don't tell me about the government not having the funds for it. I'm not beating up the judicial system, but I have to a little bit, and that's the subject for another time. But using addicts as informants, for instance, putting them back out there knowing they're addicted and not having any responsibility for that, that's evil. And I know you're trying to tell me one regular addict who has ever been able to bring down a cartel, because that's the source of your problem, okay? Anyway, that's a subject for another day. And I know law enforcement work really, really, really hard, but if you can afford to put these people in prison and you don't have enough space for those who are hurting kids, you don't have enough space for those who are, have violent crimes, but you have enough space for these people who have possession charges. I mean, you got to be kidding me. There's money there. There's money there. And you can take, just like you do with an 18-year-old who comes in and gets a job as a corrections officer with just a GED. You can do that with the recovery. If you don't have enough people in that field, you just take recovered addicts that you've vetted, obviously, because not everybody's suited for that. But those who are suited and want to, as they're in that recovery process, you train them for that, and that you make that the wave of the future. And get them employed, get them feeling accountable, get them able to take care of themselves. It's a win-win all the way around. I don't know how they can tell me that it can't work out. It can work out. Yeah. Yep. Oh, and that's what I was going to say. I forgot to tell you, Diane. There's a big controversy because there's a couple of rehabilitation centers who have been exploiting people who are in recovery or go there to get help or disappearing. You have a couple of groups who are bartering with, primarily females, but I'm sure it'll show up that it's males too eventually, to give exchange treatment or promise treatment in exchange for sex favors or whatever. And it made me think of Kirsten's situation. So I was pretty fired up about that. That's another issue for me, is exploitation, of kids in this whole thing. No, exactly. And you can just walk right out of the recovery center. So those people who get angry or disagree with me or say forced recovery doesn't work, well, with all due respect, it does work. It did work on me, and I've seen it work on many people. It doesn't work on everyone. But if that person, if you don't keep them in recovery and they go out and die, no one, at least if you force them into recovery or jail, you're prolonging the inevitable. And perhaps with the right tools and the right things in place, you never know, If someone's suicidal today, which has happened to me so many times I can't count, if I'm suicidal today, thank God I didn't kill myself back then. I mean, thank God I was in a place where I couldn't kill myself or I wouldn't be here today. And that's the way we have to look at this, in my personal opinion. I don't see why everyone can't look at it like that, right? So if there's no cure for cancer today, we do all we can to keep people alive until, we'll give them their own poison if we have to, which is what they do, until further notice, and we have to throw band-aids at this right now. It's not ideal, but when you have someone, especially a younger person, and who hasn't, how do I put this? I'm not saying there's not hope for a 50, 60-year-old addict at all. Anybody can change. Look what happened to me, right? I was in my 40s. But I was also in my late 30s when I became addicted. But all that aside, there's life, patterns. So some people, I had prior coping skills I'd learned in some sort of support network. But a lot of people, they go throughout their life with this if it's not nipped in the bud at youth. They go throughout their life, and then before they know it, they are in their 50s and 60s, and they have nothing to lean back on. But the young people also, they're starting out in life, and you have a chance to first prevent, but if you don't get to that point, you have a chance to get them out of all that mindset and re-educate them on life, coping skills, or whatever, and give them another chance. So, yep. Aww. Yes, they do. They know that too. That's why they're making the rounds. We all know everybody's dying, but it's not just the youth that are dying, right? We know that it's the parents dying and leaving behind children. And even if they don't die, they're leaving behind exhausted family members. So you have youth that are exhausting entire families because, moms love their kids and they'll do anything. They'll die with them if they have to. And then you have parents who are neglecting their children. So it's a multifaceted problem. Nobody wants to talk about it from a corporate America standpoint, but when you have FBI agents, which was the case a couple years ago, who are falling asleep in their cars in D.C. during investigations, police officers, sports stars, you name it, everybody, right? Then it's a problem across the board, but we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about it unless they are famous or they're celebrities. Otherwise, we're just going to talk about the regular, everyday addict, which we have stigmatized all this time. So anyway, well, I'll let everybody go. I really appreciate everybody for joining. Thank you, Diana, and hopefully we'll be able to get the live feed with her on here and get some, parents who have no experience with addiction, or are going through it right now with their kids, or whatever the case, or maybe have preteen kids or whatever and want some information on what the spiral looks like from an outsider's point of view. Diane definitely can do that. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. Thanks for watching. My light's disappearing. I need to turn some lights on, and I won't have to get up. But thank you for watching, and share if you can, and then hopefully we can maybe get more going, especially with women, because I'm going to get a group session together, even if we're in different parts of the country, and even if we're whatever we have to do, technologically speaking, to incorporate everyone, then that's what I will do. I love the guys. But as my experience as a woman and having to watch what my daughter went through, that's where my passion is, the women and the youth. And so that's where I'm going to be. All right? The curtains are open. The curtains are open. You have to understand, I live near, Diane can defend me on this, I live near an area with a lot of high traffic because we're right at the road, and because it's a rural road, people rip through here like they're practicing their driving skills, or they know, but the cops are, I don't know, but they do it anyway. And it gets really noisy, especially all those homemade souped up engines and whatnot. Yeah. The advance notice I did give, but I had to reschedule because I had it for 2:30, but I had a call come in, and then I had some that were delayed, so I was waiting for an attorney and then another mother to call me back, and it didn't, well, the attorney didn't call back. Anyway, all right, everybody, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I really hope that we can come together and see it for what it is. So have a good night. It's getting real dark in here. Take care, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye.